In a world where power decided who mattered, one woman stepped into a mansion not to serve, but to change everything. Her name was Amahal, a quiet figure with eyes that spoke more than words ever could. No one knew where she came from, no past, no family, no trace of her life before she appeared at the massive Mbeki estate. She was just another maid to everyone else, but from the moment she crossed that gate, fate had already begun to stir. Amahal worked silently, gracefully, never gossiping, never complaining. Yet there was something unusual about her. The staff whispered that she was too calm, too observant, as if she carried a secret they couldn't see. Every corner of the mansion, every routine, she memorized like poetry. While others moved in fear of the wealthy owner, Mr. Thando Mbeki Amahal walked with quiet confidence. And that alone made her different. One evening, as the golden lights of the dining hall shimmered across polished glass, Thando noticed her for the first time. He was a man of power, used to silence and obedience. Yet there was something disarming about how she met his gaze. "You're new here," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "What's your name?" "Amahal, sir." She replied softly. "You're different," he murmured. "Most people avoid looking at me." She smiled faintly and said, "Power doesn't scare me, sir. It reveals people." Those words lingered in his mind long after she left the room. A week later, during a stormy night, Thando entered his private library and found Amahal standing there, reading one of his books. He was surprised, even offended. "Those shelves aren't for staff," he said firmly, but Amahal didn't flinch. "Knowledge doesn't belong to rank, sir," she answered, her voice calm, her eyes steady. For the first time in years, he didn't feel anger. He felt curiosity, even admiration. "You're bold," he said. She smiled slightly. Sometimes boldness is the only way poor people survive. That night, something inside Thando shifted. Her courage had touched a part of him that success and wealth could never reach. Days turned into weeks. Amahal proved herself to be more than just a maid. Her intelligence and precision quietly fixed problems that had gone unnoticed for months. Missing files, counting errors, even dishonest employees. She worked silently but saw everything. And then, one evening, she discovered something that would change everything. A hidden transfer of millions under the company's name. Connected to one of Thando's most trusted managers. She knew the risk of speaking, but truth had always been her compass. That night, as thunder rolled over the city, Amahal overheard voices in the corridor. "She knows too much," one whispered. "We need to get rid of her before she talks." Her blood ran cold. They were plotting against her. Instead of panicking, she wrote everything down, dates, names, details, and hid the notebook behind a loose brick in her small quarters. It was her only proof, and she knew it might one day save her life. The next morning, the house was unusually tense. Amahal was called into the grand hall. The head maid stood before everyone, holding a small velvet box. "You've been stealing," she accused sharply. Amahal frowned, shocked. "I've never touched what isn't mine." The head maid opened her locker, and there, lying neatly inside, was the missing diamond necklace. Gasps echoed through the hall. "I didn't do this," Amahal said, her voice trembling. "Someone put it there?" But before she could speak further, Thando appeared at the top of the stairs. His face was unreadable. "Take her away," he said quietly. As the guards dragged her away, Amal's eyes met his. She didn't cry or beg. She just looked at him, the man she thought saw beyond appearances, and realized how quickly truth could be buried by power. They locked her in a storage room, and rain poured endlessly outside. But instead of breaking down, she whispered to herself, "When the storm ends, truth will walk with me." Hours later, the door creaked open. Thando stood there, holding her hidden notebook. His voice was low, almost guilty. "You hid this from me." Amahal looked up at him. "You wouldn't have believed me if I told you," she said calmly. He opened the pages, his eyes scanning the records, the same stolen funds. The manager's signature, every detail perfectly written. His face changed from doubt to shock. You were protecting me, he whispered. I was protecting the truth, she replied. For the first time, Thando saw the depth of her strength. She wasn't just a maid. She was a woman who stood for something in a world built on lies. Guilt washed over him. He had condemned the only person who had truly cared about his name. The rainlight flashed through the window as he stood there, silent, realizing how wrong he had been. That night, he set her free. But Amahal didn't thank him. She simply looked into his eyes and said, "Power is tested by how it treats the powerless." Her words cut deeper than anger ever could. She walked out into the rain, leaving him standing in the silence of his guilt. The next morning, whispers filled the mansion. The corrupt manager had disappeared. The stolen money had been anonymously returned. But Amahal was nowhere to be found. Thando stood by his window, her notebook in his hands. Reading the final line she had written, "Truth doesn't kneel forever." The rain outside seemed to echo her words. And for the first time he understood that her departure wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something neither of them could yet name. As the camera slowly pulled back from the mansion, the sound of distant thunder blended with a haunting African chorus. The voiceover whispered softly, "She entered his life as a maid." But destiny had already written a crown on her soul. The storm passed, but the silence that followed shook Thando more than the thunder ever had. Amel's absence turned his mansion into an empty shell. For days, her voice echoed in his thoughts. Power is tested by how it treats the powerless. Those words had become his punishment. He couldn't focus on his meetings, couldn't sleep in peace. Every corner reminded him of her, the woman he had wronged, the woman who had carried truth when everyone else carried greed. Yet somewhere deep inside, Thando knew he hadn't seen the last of her. Weeks went by. The news spread through the city that Thando Mbeki, the once feared businessman, had begun selling his shares and donating to local charities. People whispered that guilt had softened him. But few knew the real story, that behind his every action was a shadow. A memory, a quiet voice reminding him that redemption required more than regret. Far away, Amahal had started a small foundation using the little savings she had. She taught young women how to read, how to speak with confidence, how to rise above fear. The community adored her. They called her the Queen of Courage. She never sought revenge. Her only goal was to give others the voice she never had. Yet destiny wasn't done with her. One afternoon, while addressing a youth gathering, she noticed cameras flashing, journalists recording her story. The next morning, every major news outlet carried her headline. "Former Maid exposes corruption, inspires women across the nation." Her calm face and strong words captured hearts everywhere. Thando saw that broadcast. For the first time in months, he smiled, not out of pride, but relief. She had found her light, and it was brighter than his entire empire. But just when peace seemed near, fate twisted again. One night, Amahal received a letter. No sender name, just a black seal. Inside were old company documents, the same stolen funds, but with a new signature. Thando's her heart froze. Was he behind everything after all? Or was someone framing him again? She couldn't rest. The truth had betrayed her once before. She wouldn't let it happen again. She returned to the city quietly under the heavy clouds of a coming storm, the same kind that had once changed her life. When she reached the gates of the Mbeki mansion, the guards hesitated, shocked to see her again. But Thando himself appeared, stepping out slowly, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, they said nothing. Only the wind spoke between them. Inside, Thando placed the old notebook on the table. "I've been waiting for you," he said softly. Amahal looked straight into his eyes. "Then tell me, did you steal what you swore to protect?" His face darkened with pain. "Those papers were forged. The man I once trusted is now trying to bury me with my own past." He handed her another envelope, evidence showing the real traitor, the manager who had vanished months ago, now running an illegal empire abroad. I needed you to see it yourself, Thando said. Because this time, I don't want you to hear my truth. I want you to hold it. Amel's heart trembled. For the first time, she saw the man not as a master or a villain, but as a human being broken, trying, learning. The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. 'Twas heavy with understanding. Sometimes destiny takes us through storms not to drown us, but to wash away the lies around us. Amahal exhaled deeply and said, "The people deserve to know the truth, not for your name, but for justice." Thando nodded. Together, they decided to expose the truth publicly. The next morning, the two stood side by side before the press. Thando admitted every mistake he had made, not the crimes, but the arrogance that had blinded him. Amahal then spoke, her voice calm yet powerful. Forgiveness is not weakness, strength that rebuilds a broken world. Her words silenced the room. The crowd erupted in applause. If you were in Amel's place, would you forgive him or walk away forever? Pause for 3 seconds. Allow emotional reflection. Comment your answer below. I read every story you share. As the press conference ended, the same people who once called her a maid now saw her as a symbol of grace. That night, Thando walked her to the car park. "Amahal," he said softly, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." She looked at him and smiled gently. Forgiveness isn't something you deserve, it's something you earn by changing. The weeks that followed turned into a quiet miracle. Thando began rebuilding his company with transparency and heart. He invited Amahal to lead the charity department, but she hesitated. "People will talk," she said. "Let them," he replied. "Truth has already chosen you." As they worked together, something beautiful unfolded, not love born from power, but love born from respect. Every decision, every project, every late-night discussion pulled them closer. Amel's voice became his compass. Thando's humility became her peace. One evening, after a successful fundraiser, Thando stood before hundreds of guests and did something no one expected. He took the microphone and said, "Months ago, I met a woman who entered my life to clean what was visible, but she ended up cleaning what was hidden in my heart." Gasps filled the hall as he turned toward Amahal. "She entered as my maid, but she is my queen." Tears welled in Amel's eyes. The crowd stood, applauding, some crying, some recording the moment that would soon go viral across the nation. In that moment, she realized something powerful. The crown she wore wasn't made of gold, but of grace. Later that night, away from cameras and lights, Amahal whispered an old African proverb. "Rain does not fall on one roof alone." She meant that every human heart carries storms. What matters is who stands with you under them. Thando smiled, taking her hand gently. "You taught me that," he said. As the camera slowly zoomed out from the balcony, city lights shimmering in the background, the voiceover returned, calm, deep, and poetic. She entered his life as a maid, but left as his queen, not by crown, not by title, but by the truth she refused to bury. The screen faded to black as soft music played and white text appeared. Sometimes, love isn't about who you meet first. It's about who stays true when the world turns away.